All right, everybody, welcome back for another deep dive. You know how we do it around here. Get ready to go deep.
Always exciting to be back.
Today, we're diving into something pretty interesting, romantic relationships and how they're seen by men and women.
Sounds intriguing.
Yeah, it is. We've got this excerpt from an article called Romantic Relationships Matter More to Men Than to Women.
Oh, wow.
It's written by Iris V. Waring.
Okay.
This article, it's really makes you think differently about, all those assumptions we have about romance.
Yeah, those societal norms we often hear about.
Exactly. So by the end of this dive, hopefully we can kind of turn those ideas upside down a little bit.
Looking forward to it.
So this article basically says that romantic relationships are more important for men than women in terms of like their well-being.
That's pretty counterintuitive to what we usually hear, right?
Right. Like usually we think of women as the ones who are all about romance and relationships.
Exactly, like all those rom-coms and societal expectations we see. Yeah.
Exactly. But this article is saying, no, it's actually the guys who are more invested.
Interesting take.
Yeah, and I got to admit, when I first read that, I was like, wait, what? Really?
Yeah, I can see why that would be surprising.
It just seems so opposite of everything, we're told.
For sure.
But here's the thing, and this is what kind of bugs me. The article doesn't really go into why this might be.
So it presents the idea but doesn't delve into the reasoning?
Yeah, just throws it out there like a grenade and then walks away.
Okay, well then let's try to unpack this a bit.
Exactly. Hoping you can help us figure this out. Why would romantic relationships matter more to men, at least when it comes to like their overall happiness?
Okay, so one thing that comes to mind is how men and women tend to approach social connections and support, you know?
Oh, okay, interesting. Tell me more.
Traditionally, men aren't as likely to have those tight-knit groups of friends where they can just, open up and be vulnerable.
Yeah, I see where you're going with this.
So for a lot of guys, their romantic partner becomes their main source of emotional support.
Ah, so you're saying that the strength and stability of that relationship becomes super important for their well-being.
Exactly, because they might not have that same level of support from other areas of their lives.
That makes a lot of sense.
Whereas women often have, a wider circle of friends and family they can rely on.
Right, they've got more options for emotional support.
Exactly.
But haven't there been studies showing that married men are statistically like happier and healthier than single men?
Yeah, that's true. There's definitely research supporting that.
So wouldn't that mean it's the relationship itself, not just the emotional support that makes a difference?
You bring up a good point, and it leads to the whole question of correlation versus causation.
Oh, right.
Are men happier because they're in relationships, or are happier men just more likely to get into relationships in the first place?
Yeah, that's a tricky one to disentangle.
It really is. There's definitely room for debate on that.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got this idea that men might rely more on their partners for emotional support. But what about societal expectations? Do you think those play a role in how men see and value relationships?
Oh, absolutely. Societal expectations are huge.
In what way?
Well, for generations, men have been taught that their worth is tied to their ability to provide and protect.
The classic breadwinner image.
Exactly. And that often gets linked to the traditional idea of being a husband and a father.
So basically, men are being told that being successful as a man means being in a relationship and having a family.
Yeah, that's a pretty common message.
Wow, that puts a lot of pressure on guys.
It does, and it can make being single or going through a breakup feel like a much bigger personal failure for men than it might for women.
Because it challenges that whole idea of what it means to be a man.
Exactly.
You know what? I want to pause here for a second and ask you, the listener, to think about your own experiences. Does this idea that romantic relationships matter more to men resonate with you?
It's a good question to reflect on.
Think about the men in your life, your partners, your friends, your family. Do their attitudes and behaviors around relationships match up with what we're talking about?
I think that personal reflection is really key because ultimately, these are just theories and observations.
Right.
The real insights come from looking at our own lives and the relationships we see around us.
Okay, so let's say we do entertain this idea. We accept that romantic relationships might hold a different kind of weight for men. How does that change things?
That's a good question.
What are the implications for how we approach relationships and communication between genders?
Well, for one thing, I think it emphasizes the need for more empathy and understanding.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If we recognize that men might be coming to the table with different needs and expectations, we can be more aware of how we communicate and support each other.
So it's about recognizing those differences and adjusting our communication accordingly. I gotta say, This deep dive has really made me question those typical gender roles and see how complex things are when it comes to how men and women experience relationships.
It's definitely more nuanced than we often realize.
It's not about saying one gender cares more. It's about understanding that the way we prioritize and experience those relationships might be shaped by all sorts of factors.
Right, like those societal expectations we talked about.
Exactly.
If anyone listening wants to dig deeper into this, I'd recommend checking out research on attachment styles.
Oh yeah, attachment theory. That's fascinating stuff.
It really is. It looks at how our early childhood experiences can influence how we form and maintain relationships throughout our lives.
Right, like how our relationships with our parents can shape our romantic relationships later on.
Exactly.
That's a great suggestion. And who knows, maybe understanding these dynamics will help us all build stronger and more fulfilling relationships in the future.
Here's hoping.
Thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
As always, it's been a pleasure.
Got you next time.
See you then.